guess we should call it a day.
Here's your stuff, man.
Hey. Dude, relax. Relax.
Daryl!
Daryl! Stop! Stop!
Guys, what the fuck are you doing? Please, stop! Guys, this is just, you're being idiots right now, okay? Can you
Guys, please stop.
Stop! Guys, this is not a good idea.
Oh my god, oh my god.
Josh, what did you...
Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god.
What did you do? What were you doing?
What is that? What did you do? What the fuck? What did that?
I don't take it out. I don't know. All right, okay, I'm gonna take it out.
What did you do? What did you fucking do? What did you do?
Oh, shit.
Josh, what the fuck did you do?
Super Dark Times is a coming-of-age story at heart. Teenagers hanging out, riding bikes around the small town, worrying about girls and relationships, doing whatever to satisfy the time after school. Moments we're all familiar with when we were younger and what I feel myself missing more now that I'm getting older. In reality, Super Dark Times shows us the worst parts of growing up and shows us how trauma, struggles of masculinity, and the loss of innocence changes us. The film puts the viewers in the shoes of the characters and shows us what it would be like for this transformation of us as we get older and shaped by years of experiences to be defined as one single terrible moment that changes everything. At the beginning of the film, we're shown multiple shots of broken glass and blood trails on the ground through a school. Then we're finally shown what's caused this. A deer is shown in the school's cafeteria on the ground with blood all over it as it cries out. The police officer then putting the deer out of its misery as we see Allison watching the scene unfold. When the students are told to get out of the cafeteria though, Allison keeps watching through the door's window while holding the back of her neck. And to some it may seem as if there's really no meaning, especially since we aren't even shown the two main protagonists until after this scene. This scene of the deer is really overlooked, but it introduces a lot of the movie's core themes right off the bat. Some viewers interpret the deer as a symbol of innocence that would be shown lost in the group of boys because deer are seen as innocent creatures. To many, just in the same way kids are known to be innocent. Deer's or doe's instinct in almost any scenario is to flee. They are non-confrontational and they run from any noise that they hear. In many indigenous American and Eastern spiritual traditions, the deer or doe serves as a totem for the soul, gentle guidance, and unconditional love. The school being a place of safety that we are supposed to feel while being broken into like a bubble of safety, dropping the sense of security that we have. Regardless of your interpretation, the scene shows us that death is near. Just like the school, the boys we are introduced to next are going to have their world shattered and challenged as well. Super Dark Times tells us that innocence is fragile and once it's broken, it cannot be restored.
The opening scene itself, again, that scene for me it always existed as an omen and a metaphor for everything to come. It was a tonal, note for the audience as well to kind of basically sit in and get a sense of how the rest of the film will feel, but also, thematically, kind of like place that up right up in the front. As to, in a way, what to expect, or also kind of, maybe what not to expect.
If I lost a hand, I would definitely get a hoof.
Yeah.
Before the climax occurs, we spend a lot of time hanging out with our main characters, Josh, Zach, Charlie, and Daryl, with Josh and Zach being more of a duo friendship. We watch them ride their bikes through the town, talk about girls, and make crude jokes. On the surface, these seem like ordinary things typical teenagers would do. But the film establishes something more than just ordinary talks. Like I mentioned earlier, the boys' conversations are constantly filled with crude jokes and profanity, as if the more they talk, the more provocative they each get, as if they're trying to impress one another. In a literal sense, when Daryl finds shredded squid in the gas station they are in, he dares Zach to eat the squid, but when he does, he throws it up and acts disgusted. But then Josh grabs it and eats it and swallows it as if it was nothing, even saying that it's not terrible. There are many scenes like this in the film, from Zach and Josh one-upping each other on what they would do to a girl they both have a crush on, to the both of them screaming a word I can't say on YouTube outside of Allison's house, the girl that they both have a crush on, seeing who can be louder. The one who constantly pushes to be on top and the one that quote-unquote wins these little games mentioned is Josh. Josh constantly seeks attention and tries to establish himself as a dominant person with the group, or even just when he's with Zach. The best example, and to me one of the most powerful scenes before the accident, is the bridge scene. Josh, Zach, Charlie, and Daryl go into an abandoned bridge. They go to the ledge and look over the railing at the water below. Everyone is at the same level, but Josh, even in this situation, feels as if he needs to one-up everyone there. He climbs on a ledge behind them where he stands over the group, looking down at them, as Zach notices and watches Josh. This moment reflecting Josh throughout the film, Josh always wanting validation and control of the situation. He stands above everyone else. Teenagers are still trying to figure out who they are, and they seek validation through recognition through their friends and parents. One way of gaining validation through friend groups is by establishing dominance within the group. When we see Josh's behavior, it's less like confidence and more like compensation. The more he does to one-up everyone, the more we question how he feels about himself under the surface. We learn he has an older brother named Danny, who we learn is in the Marines and who Zach describes as a prodigy.
Your brother's like a total prodigy.
I thought you had an older brother.
Yeah, I do. Danny's in the Marines.
His shit's still here?
Almost as if Josh wants to live up to his brother's standards and is the reason why he acts the way he does. When Josh, Zach, and Daryl go in his brother's room, they are amazed at everything they find, from nunchucks to weed. When Daryl asks if they can smoke it, Josh denies and turns their attention to the sword that belonged to his brother, and to what Josh sees as a symbol of power. It's larger, stronger, and makes him more in control when holding it. To Zach and Daryl, the sword is exciting and cool, but for Josh, the sword becomes a tool for violence when they play with it, not knowing it will change them forever.
That's so sick.
Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, let Charlie go.
Yeah, come on, let me go. Sure.
After taking the sword outside, we see Josh slicing at milk jugs, and we see him hesitant to give Charlie the sword when asked. When Josh saw Daryl smoking something, he immediately knows it's his brother's weed that Daryl stole from his room. When Josh asks Daryl, he freaks out and they begin to argue. After Charlie insists that they go home, Daryl goes behind Josh and hits him, knocking him to the ground. When Josh gets up, he grabs a sword and fixes his glasses, only for Daryl to swing again, causing the both of them to fall to the ground. When they both fall, the sword goes into Daryl's neck. What makes the scene so disturbing is how quickly it all unfolds. The build-up to the scene is only a couple of seconds of them arguing. We are never shown them getting physical with each other, only them competing with each other on their own psychological ladder that they climb to compete for dominance in the group. Instantly, their innocence and fantasy-like view of the world collides with the consequences and their bubble breaking. The boys' reaction to the accident is telling. There is no response at first, no plan, only until after now when things seem light for the group remaining. There is only panic, fear, and confusion. Josh, Zach, and Charlie are now faced with trying to process something no kid would understand, let alone even adults. From this point forward, their innocence is gone, and the story becomes a cycle of trauma shapes us. And for some, it shows us what we were going to become. Super Dark Times stops becoming a coming-of-age story. It becomes a study of trauma and our shadows. The aftermath shows Josh, Zach, and Charlie struggling of keeping their story straight. It shows us how the same events they all went through fractures each other in a different way. After the accident, they all decide to act like nothing ever happened. They hide Daryl's body and they go their separate ways. But as they all split up, they each go through their own different episodes and struggles to cope with the accident.
So when Daryl dies, being as, loud as Daryl is throughout the film, like when he dies, we really wanted there to be like a void in the soundscape. We wanted the audience to feel that, to the point of, if he's obnoxious, but when he's gone, you don't, that quality's gone from the film as well, and like you just feel that much more.
You gotta talk.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we do.
Charlie, who Josh and Zach just met, separates himself from the group and wants nothing to do with them. When Zach goes to talk to Charlie after the accident, Charlie states that he doesn't know Zach and nothing happened. Avoidance is a common trauma response to trauma. When we are confronted with an event that is overwhelming or too painful to process, people will create distance between them and the source of their distress. Rather than talking about the situation, Charlie would rather move forward and maybe they will forget what happened to Daryl.
I don't remember what I did last Tuesday, so why would I remember what I did this Tuesday? Probably I went home after school, stayed there alone until my parents got home. It's what I do most weekdays. If anyone asks, we're not friends.
Because the film is through the view of Zach, throughout the rest of the film, we barely see or hear from Charlie. When Zach tries to talk to Charlie, after going back to Daryl and finding Daryl beat up, Charlie refuses to listen to Zach, and he tells him to never talk to him again. While at first this seems wrong of Charlie to do, he recognizes that nothing can change what happened. Instead of being consumed by it like Zach, he chooses to distance himself from anybody and anything to do with it. Zach, rather than distancing himself from the tragedy, lives with it. Zach begins to have nightmares of Daryl, representing the guilt of the accident weighing him down. He has another nightmare of Allison, the girl who by now obviously has a crush on him, but because he's so concerned about the accident, he can't even kiss or let alone talk to. In this wet dream of his, though, the sword sits above them, weighing over him, and as he becomes more paranoid about Josh after not seeing him at school, he dreams of Josh watching him and Allison. It's obvious by now Zach is experiencing guilt being the most common response to trauma. Even though he didn't cause the accident, he searches for ways it could have gone or a way to tell somebody without getting in any trouble. Zach still believes that they can all move on from this. He believes everything can go back to the way it was, yet every interaction and second he's reminded of what happened. Even his best friend, who he was always with, is a reminder of what happened. And when he sees Josh again, Josh acts like nothing happened and he brushes it off so easily. And it makes him question what Josh is really doing. Zach doesn't realize that the person before the accident isn't the same person who came out after. Zach carries the weight of guilt that Josh is expected to carry, but instead of doing the right thing, Josh does what he's used to doing, but hiding what it really turned him into. While Charlie distances himself from the situation, Zach becomes consumed by it. Josh responds to all of this in a complete opposite way that is terrifying and makes you question, how did it get this way? Josh, like he has always been, tries to be the dominant one in the group, but only after weirdly being confronted by Zach for not coming to school. And when Zach mentions that they shouldn't draw any attention to themselves, shows back up. Josh visits Zach, and Zach confronts him for a second time about Daryl's body being messed with, only for Josh to steer away the question and try to regain control of the conversation.
Well, you're wrong. And you're wrong about me, too.
At Allison's party, Josh gives Allison his brother's weed that caused the argument with Daryl in the first place. This act of him giving Allison the weed is a power move by Josh in front of Zach to show him how he's over the accident and how his morals have changed. But it also shows how Josh's morals are completely gone. Just a couple of days ago, he didn't want anybody to touch anything in his brother's room, but now he's just willing to give it away. After Zach hears about the disappearance of John, a person who was seen bullying Josh and Zach at the beginning of the film, is when Zach puts the pieces together and goes to confront Josh, only to find no one home, and on Josh's phone call history, he sees Allison's number.
What's with the beach towel?
It's a surprise.
At this point in the story, Zach knows what's about to happen, and when we see Josh again, he's at Allison's house with her and her friend Megan. Before Josh shows them his sword, he's seen chugging a glass of milk. Milk has been associated with childhood and nurturing throughout film history, milk representing maternal care and purity. Milk has been a reoccurring image in the film, with a milk carton being shown earlier in the film seconds before the accident, being sliced in half, foreshadowing their childhood innocence and purity going away. Yet the reoccurring image of milk in this scene serves as a reminder that despite everything that has happened and will happen, they are still kids at heart. When Zach arrives and tries to go in the door upstairs, Josh locks the door. So Zach climbs onto the roof and breaks in through the window to find Megan on the bed and Allison on the ground, presumably injured but breathing with a slash behind her neck. Zach knows in that moment what he must do, but when Josh overpowers him with the sword, Zach pleads with Josh only to distract him and run. Josh loses his sword as Zach fights back, symbolizing that he has lost his only source of power. Zach wins with a final shot of them being Josh in the police car and Zach being treated by paramedics. To better understand Josh's transformation, it's important to look at psychologist Carl Jung. Jung believed that every person possesses what he calls the shadow being the aspects of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow being anything from aggression, jealousy, fear, or in Josh's scenario, violence. These being qualities that people push onto the unconscious where they remain hidden. According to Jung, though, under the right circumstances, the shadow appears. Throughout the first half of the film, we see hints of who he will be. He constantly needs to one-up everyone, his desire for validation, and his obsession with appearing strong, but his actions and reality suggesting deep insecurity beneath the surface. The accident in time stripping away his mask he wore around people, only to show these violent traits that were always present. At first, Josh seems to bury his trauma by locking himself away, but later going to his old ways to control everything. But from Jung's perspective, the horror of the situation is that Josh is forced to confront this violent part of himself that only became clear after the accident. The accident brought his shadow to the surface and exposing who he really is despite the mask he projected to everyone around him. The last scene being Allison in school after the events of Josh's attack, showing a scar she now has on the back of her neck, then ending the film. To many, showing Allison again like in the beginning when she was watching the deer is strange. There's a running theory that has a lot of evidence to Allison being obsessed with violence after watching the deer in the beginning, saying that she helped Josh or even persuaded Josh to do what he does in the film as a puppeteer almost. There's already a good video put together by another YouTuber explaining this theory, and I'm going to leave it in the description of the video. Regardless of whether this was the intent Kevin Phillips made for the film or not, the scar tells us that she's able to move on from the trauma she went through herself. While it will stay with her forever, it won't define her as she moves on with her life.
You know, like adding on to what Kevin says, it's like with masculinity, it shows how crazy and stupid and awful boys can be, especially around girls at that age, and they just don't understand it, and that's why, it ends with Elizabeth Cappuccino. We call her
Cappy.
Cappy. Yeah, and it ends with her because she was the only one that had nothing to do with it, and she got
It's scarred on her neck.
she got cut up with a sword. So I think it's important that it ended with her.